to our next speaker. This is Dr. Howard Adams from H.D. Adams and Associates. Many of you have seen Howard doing career sessions for FASEB and does a spectacular job. He does have a lot of experience in dealing with mentor-mentee relationships. And today, Howard is going to talk to us about how seeing the role of a scientist, both from a mentee and a mentor perspective. How does that mentee-mentee relationship that Karen referred to, right, like having a good set of social network, good mentor to help you, and how is it that we best optimize that relationship, that mentor-mentee relationship, when we're dealing with workplace challenges and things like dealing with manuscript and grant rejections, dealing with difficult relationships in the lab or difficulties in your own department. We're going to open the floor now to Howard to talk about that, improving that mentor-mentee relationship. Welcome, Howard.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming again early this morning, and thank you for setting the stage for us that got to follow. Let me just get a sense of how many people are students? May I get a sort of rough? And how many are faculty? Okay, we got a lot of faculty. How many are the administrators but don't teach anything? Anybody? All right, a couple of little short hands. That could be a big hand. All right. Undergrads, any undergrads? All right, that's a big hand, but just a few. Okay, just want to have some sense of who we were talking to. Let me say something about, since I've sort of got either faculty or graduate students, I always say to grad students specifically, and junior faculty specifically also, that what you're doing is a hard climb, so let's get over that. Being a grad student is a hard climb, okay? So let me get that out of the way. Starting out as a junior faculty, trying to meet the milestones that you got to meet, hard climb. Short time frame, whole lot of things that you got to adjust to, going to be challenging, okay? We're going to talk about how you sort of deal with that, how do you sort of settle into that psychologically, some other kind of things. I'm going to talk to you about mentoring. Mentoring is really just having somebody that you can talk to, who value you, respect you, and don't have a hidden agenda, want to see you do well. They'll get in your life, all right? Now, when I say that, don't eliminate yourself. I'm talking to everybody now. If you're still working, you need somebody to talk to, even old folk like me. I just turned 75 years old Saturday, and I still need somebody to talk to. So you need someone to talk to. Surely if I need somebody, you need someone, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you do with that and how you do that, and we'll run through this relatively fast so we can have some dialogue. But let's just define what we're talking about. When we talk about mentoring, we're talking about one word, an enabling relationship. I want to hit that and drill it in your head. An enabling relationship where we take a very good person and we make them better. So if we're talking about a student who comes in the room, we don't start off thinking I got bad students. We start off thinking that we've got good students that we can make what? Better. We're going to enable them to be better. All right? I've got a junior colleague that we're very fortunate to have, and we're going to make that junior colleague what? Better. That's what this is, okay? And we say that it's an experienced person. They've had some experiences that this other person hasn't had, and we're willing to share in that, okay? And if you look down at what I'm trying to make sure that this, in my case, I'm a mentor and have been a long time. I'm a mentor, I'm a coach, those kind. We're going to talk about that. But at a conference like this, I sit at a table in the Resource Center and talk to junior colleagues. It doesn't make any difference whether they're undergrads, graduate students, and I'm amazed that I learn something from almost everybody who come to talk to me. So I benefit from doing that. I hope they benefit. And since I've been in here, I've met a couple of people who have been to my workshops, have seen me, and so they tell me that they have benefited from my being around. So that's what we want to talk about. So let's just get that. It's an enabling relationship, right? And the bottom says, have no hidden agendas. It doesn't matter about age. It doesn't matter about sex. It doesn't matter about anything. All those things go away. And so I sort of joke with people, if you've been in my workshop, when I stood up this morning, you knew I was black, right? Right? Okay. I was black when I came in this room this morning. When I got up, I was black. When I get finished, I'm going to be black. When I go to bed, I'm going to be black. Has nothing to do with anything. It's just who I am. all right? So get over that. Get over that there are going to be some female colleagues, some international colleagues. Has nothing to do with anything. It's just what we bring to the process. So before I wanted to set the stage because sometimes when I'm talking, I forget exactly what I want to say, so let me make sure I'm saying the right thing. All right. The function of mentoring. So as we set the stage, the function, okay. The first one I think a mentor does is influences. And it helps you to accept the responsibility of where you are. That's what I mean by that. Good mentors do that. And let me just bring some of my mentors in the room. I tell people I've always had a mentor since I was 10 years old. I've had a mentor outside of my house. But if you never heard me speak before, one of the very fortunate things that happened to me was, and I'm going to talk about how this helps you with challenges. I met the president. I'm from Danville, Virginia, out in the country, not right in the city. I'm 13 miles from the city, but Danville, Virginia is the closest place to me. And I met the president of the cotton mill when I was 10 years old. He used to come out to our house to hunt, and I'd walk through the woods with him. And I picked his brain at 10 years old. That's what a mentee does with a mentor. You pick their brains. They've had experiences that you haven't had. So you can get your questions asked and answered if it's a good mentor. So here I am with about a 53-year-old white male, 1950, when the world was segregated, when I was nobody. One, because I was 10 years old, and two, because I was black. And I walked through the woods with him. So I asked him, how do you get to be president? I remember asking him that. And he sort of smiled like, where'd you get that question from? And then he laughed. He said, well, I wanted it real bad. He said, you have to want to be president. He didn't tell me I couldn't be president, which I couldn't have done. He didn't say that. He simply said, you got to want this job real bad. He said, you have to want to be in charge. He said, I always wanted to be in charge. I learned that at 10 years old. I want to be in charge. I've been climbing from 10 years old, wanting to be in charge. He said, and I went to school. He said, you can't get this job if you don't go to school. Bingo. Always knew. Can you believe I got that at 10 years old from a white male who was the biggest dog in town with a little kid? I said, how much money do you make? He said, you don't need to know the exact amount, but I make more than anybody else makes. Wow, that's the job what I want. He was influencing me. He was informing me. He probed me. He expanded. You know, he did all of these kind of things. Wow. Finally, after we'd been together for 3 hunts, I said, where you live? Because everything about him was expensive. Everything. Where you live? He tried to tell me where it was. I didn't know what part of town. I said, I want to see your house. He said, okay, next time I come up here, I'll take you back with me. I'm just telling young people in this room, you have to ask your question. You got me? So he took me with him when we drove up in front of this great big house, great big columns, sitting on 5 acres of land, 3-car garage, dog house in the backyard with a dog that he paid $150 for in 1950. The dog house had electricity running to it. I said, how do you pay for all this? Do you pay for all of this? He said, they give me my salary, and he said, I get an allowance for my house. I want a job that you get what? An allowance. I knew that at 10 years old. So let's look at that then. What do we mean by influencing, informing? So to my mentors, you are a person of self-disclosure. That's what he was doing. He was disclosing himself to me, breaking it down so a 10-year-old could appreciate that. I asked him, why you got 3 cars? Ain't but 2 drivers? He had 3 cars. He drove a Jeep when he came out to hunt. He said, the Jeep is my recreation vehicle. Told me that at 10 years old. Wow, he's got a recreation vehicle. Then he has a sedan, which is my business car, he said. He let me probe him. Pick his what? Brain. Ask and get my questions what? Answered. So when you're faced with challenges, you ought to have somebody in your life that you can go get your questions what? you can be vulnerable with. I call it having a bad day with somebody. Women specifically a lot of time need to be able to have a bad what? Day. International people sometimes have to be able to have a bad what? Day. And I definitely need to have somebody I can have a what? Bad day with. Let me just give you what I mean by that. When I applied to graduate school at Syracuse, they hadn't had a whole lot of black folk come. And they didn't quite know how to scrutinize my admissions pack. My scores weren't quite as high. Nobody was there to tell them that in the black community we don't use as many words as white folk use. You all just go on and on when you're trying to say something. You just keep on talking. Black folk just get right to the point. We'll say, yo, how you doing? That means I asked about the dog, your family, everything in one sentence. If I was white, I would have gone on and asked you about a whole lot of stuff. I'd have had to wait for you all 15 minutes to get that question out. So we are sort of language bound. It's a cultural what? Thing. So if you give me one of these tests that I got to take with a whole lot of words on it, whole lot of reading, I haven't been prepped for the test. I didn't have anybody who told me to go do that. And so I come in there totally cold, trying to read what you have already practiced for. And so if I lose any time, since the test is time-bound, I'm not going to do as well. They didn't know that until I got there. You better believe I explained that to them once I got there. I had no trouble doing the work, but I couldn't get in. I was eliminated on a test that wasn't written for me. I didn't see myself in the what? In the picture, the stories, everything on the test was written in somebody else's what? Language. So good mentoring ought to help out with that. Don't look at me strange. I told you I was black. I was going to tell you about that experience. All right? Get over it. Expand the contacts. Bring me into your what? World. That's what that means. Bring me into your what? World. So introduce me. Speak to me. I moved to Notre Dame. I'm retired from the University of Notre Dame. Wonderful place. In fact, when I went there, I wasn't Catholic. I was Baptist. I wasn't Irish. I was black. All right? Don't look at that fact. All right? I would be walking down the hall and people would assume that, wonder who this black guy is. I don't know him, so they would just sort of turn their head. I would speak to people at the hall, say, hello. They'd go jump like, oh, God, I didn't see him. I know you didn't, but you're going to learn to see me when we come down the hall. You got what I'm saying? So when we talk about mentoring, we enable people to be better in our world. Let me say that to you again. When we talk about mentoring and coaching and nurturing and supporting, we enable different kind of people to be comfortable in our what? World. If I were to take you home to where I'm from, and I tried this out on some of my white friends, they didn't know that we lived in a house. I don't know where they thought we lived. They didn't know that. They thought all of us were pitiful, never had no food, didn't have no friends, didn't have no shoes. All of us are not pitiful. Okay? We were disadvantaged. But society did that. And so I'm going to try to get you prepared for that. I'm not preaching at you. I'm just trying to help you so you're going to be a better mentor. Now, what do mentors do? They advise as strategists for continuous learning, enabling people to get better. They mentor, they nurture, they support, they become advocates. And we tend not to have what? Advocates across this diverse world. We don't have sometimes a person in the room to speak up. So lots of times, women don't have an advocate in the room. and we're talking about who we're going to let, who we're going to select, who we're going to advance, who we're going to put on a committee. And you have to have an advocate in the room when those discussions take place. And good mentors take you in the room. Now, let me turn that around on the people who need this. You can't wait for somebody to come and choose you. You have to go choose what? Them. You have to go find yourself somebody. Once you find out that I need somebody in the rooms to be an advocate for me, who do you have in there? So oftentimes when I'm talking to people such as this and I'm talking to graduate students, I use the expression, do you have a big dog? So let me say that to you again. And I see some young people in here. Do you have a big dog? Or have you been just hanging around with chihuahuas? In the room where decisions are made, often they are made by what? Big dogs. So it's important that as you look at this list up here, do you have somebody that does all of that? The last one I specifically want to talk about, confronting. Because confronting just is, it's a matter of who you're talking to, the source of information that they provide, the feedback that they give you, the context in which they give it to you. Right. You are putting your tenure package together as a junior colleague, and you haven't talked to somebody who has been sitting on these committees. You're putting your dissertation together, and you've got to go defend, and you've never been to a defense. You haven't even talked to anybody who's defended. You haven't talked to a professor who sits on the committee, and so you haven't gotten the right kind of feedback. Now, I don't mean you don't have an advisor. That, yes, you got that. But sometimes you have to step outside of that circle, because sometimes you can't get all that you need from just one person. So you perhaps need multiple mentors. When I look at this list up here, I always think about it in terms of two words. Do I have supporters in all of those areas? I started off saying enablers. Do I have supporters in those areas, or do I have inhibitors in those areas? Do I have people who get in the way? We were laughing about a seminar I gave. Are you hanging around with folk who, when you tell them your story, they make you feel bad? You got to go to the lab at 12 o'clock at night, and they don't have a lab at all. In fact, they might be playing whist or bid or something. They playing bridge. God, you work all the time. That's what scientists do. When the experiment doesn't come out right, you have to run it over what? Again. You have to run it over what? Again. You turned in a paper that was not accepted, you have to write it what? Over again. You can't hang on, you can't get all your advice from people who don't have to do that. They make you feel what? Bad, because they don't understand why you're doing that. Your spouse might not even understand it. And I know you love them. I travel all the time. My wife sort of thinks I'm crazy. I have to remind her, I was working when you met me. That's why you fell in love with me, because I had a job. So just because I'm 75 years old doesn't mean I'm going to quit now. I still love what I do. Get used to it. I have to tell her that. She's been hanging around with me for 50 years. We just celebrated 50 years of marriage. Utilizing mentoring to handle challenges. That's what we're here for today, to talk about challenges. The two things basically come about when you really, if you got a good person. The first bullet up there, I hope I'm looking at this right. Have I got these in right? Yeah, okay. The first thing is sort of how to address it is, first of all, responding to the mentee's needs. Number one, as a mentor now, I'm talking to mentors. Responding to that need. Candid feedback and identifying sources of information. You talked about this list. Let me tell you one of the most fascinating things that I have ever seen with somebody doing that. There was a Dr. Carmichael who taught chemistry at Xavier University, a historical black college in Louisiana, and he sent more students, black students, to med schools and on to PhDs than anybody in the country, with no resources, no whole lot of help, okay? And I had to go, I went to meet him. How are you doing this? Because I needed to do the same thing. How do you do this all by yourself? He said, well, I found out that the students kept asking me the same question over and over again. He said, I started writing the answer down and I numbered them. And they're over there in the rack. When they come in and ask me about this, I say, go get number 5. And sit down and reading, and if you still have a question, come back and talk. Go get number 26. So when I went to see him, he had gotten up to about 50. And the most important questions that students asked me were on a sheet of paper, already answered. How do I give information to 200, 300 students? I don't have time to do that. I thought, wow, that's a good thing. So that first one is providing information, decoding stuff. How do I decode things? So I want mentors in the room, in particular the faculty, to hear me say that. How do I decode the discipline, the department, requirements, expectations, and values to the students who are going to be in my class? How do I decode me? If you come to my seminars, I just start off telling students, listen, I'm nasty. I tell students that when I say that in my seminars. I'm just a nasty person. I'm hard. I don't understand people who are pitiful and come to me with all this sad story about the dog died and stuff like that. I don't understand that. All right. If you can't get my class and have a dog, make your mind up which one is the most important. Now, mentors, let me say this. Don't you try to use my voice. Don't try to be me. Get what you're going to say to students in your what? Voice. In your personhood. People who know me know that I can tell a student, I'll break your arm off if you don't do what I say. They all laugh, but they tell each other, oh my God, don't do that with him. He will get all over you. I tell students, don't call me at 12 o'clock because I go to lunch every day at what? 12. I don't want no phone calls at 12. After I tell you that, if you call at 12 o'clock, I'll break your arm off. They tell each other, oh my God, don't call him at 12 o'clock. Wow, he's nasty. They laugh about it. They keep coming back, these same students. So I'm trying to tell you, I provide this kind of help and information in my what? Voice, in my personhood, in who I am. But I give them my phone number. You can call me in the middle of the night when you're in trouble. I'm probably the only person who go around the country and talk to all these students, and they all have my phone number. If you call me at the wrong time, I'll kill you. In all of my doing this, I have never got a silly phone call in my life. Never. My stuff, on everything I pass out, my phone number is on it. Helping students identify and implement a response to change, give them strategies, help them do what they want to do. Not you do it. When I get through coaching and mentoring, I'm finished. I let them know this is your life. You need to go do something, not me. Okay? So it's relatively easy to do. Let me get to the last two things then that I want to say to you. When we talk about changing the workplace, first of all, start with present status, where you are now. And so the feedback ought to say, I hear you saying this to me. Whatever that is, you're decoding it. Let me make sure I hear you saying this to me. You just told me, all of these things. And I come back and ask you, why do you feel like that? Why did you hear it like that? Based on what you just told me, I didn't hear the same thing that you what? Heard. And even if it was what you heard, what are we going to what? Do about it? How are we going to manage that situation? What are we going to do next? Is the kind of thing. So what is desired from here on? And now we want to talk about possibility. Possibility of getting out the hole you in, possibility of getting unstuck, possibility of taking the next step. What's the possibility? So let's go back over that. That's real critical to facing challenges. Present status. Where am I right now? And then where do we go from here based on possibilities or how I need to respond? All right? When I talk with students, and I talk to a lot of students, I really do, I talk to a lot of students, and you're sort of sitting there wondering, what do you mean? I just got a major award Saturday from the National Society of Black Engineers, which is a student-run group that's been operating for a long time, and they were meeting in Anaheim, California. And my proud moment there was when they were giving me the award. These were students that I had met in the 80s who were not going to go to grad school. And some of them I had to say, I was just telling them this morning, the young lady who introduced me, she wasn't going to go to grad school when I met her. She let me know she wasn't going to go. And I told her, I'm so sorry that you made an administrative decision like that before you talked to me, because you're going to go to grad school. You don't have no choice. I'm going to see to it that you go. So she came back again and said, I'm not going. She didn't say it quite like that, but she let me know I'm not going. So I had to call her house. I called her house, and her grandmother answered. And I said to Grandmama, I'm calling about your granddaughter, your baby. I'm trying to get her to go to graduate school. She's smart enough to go, and she's trying to tell me she's not going to go. And let me tell you what you need to say to her. When I got finished talking to Grandmama, she said, son, she called me son. That's in the black community. Son, she never seen me before. Don't you worry. That child going to go to grad school. Well, she introduced me Saturday. The young man who gave me my award is named Gary May. Black male, under 50 years old. He is the dean of engineering at Georgia Tech. I met him when he was a freshman. He's the dean at Georgia Tech. So I'm talking about present status. You're doing very well with this bachelor's degree. But the possibilities are you could go on and get a what? PhD. And so I have students stand up and say it. Practice what it's going to sound like. I want you to say your name and put PhD behind it. We just say it over and over again. They'll meet me, when I write them, then I put their name and put PhD behind it in parentheses. They tell me that there are about 31 black females in the United States who have PhDs in engineering and are full professors. They are full professors in engineering. 8 of them are mine from all over the United States. And I'm not bragging about that. I'm just telling you what we can do when we mentor very well. And we can help people face the challenges. Let me end with this then. Clarify what the issue is. People come to you with stuff, but it's not the issue. So let's just clarify what it is. And you help them do that. You help them by asking what, why, how, some questions. Establish a goal to respond to the challenge. How are we going to respond to that challenge? How are we going to get out of the hole? How are we going to speed up this? You're taking 7 years to get a PhD. It doesn't take that long. Doesn't take that long. We should be out of here. How do we help you respond to that? Prioritize tasks. Tell me what you do every day. How have you been functioning? The women in here, now it's important that we talk about that because women do have different roles. We just have one daughter, but my wife was the child caregiver. She really was. I mean, I helped out, but I didn't do that. I mean, I never kept my daughter all day till she was 2 years old. You know, it was just a long time ago. I mean, I guess I would do different today, but at the time I was coming along, the first time I kept my daughter all day, she was 2 years old. That's a different role. So how do we establish goals to be a wife, a mother, a professional, all of the kind of demands that we have? And we ought to talk about that. And we ought to talk about how to put that together. How do we prioritize a task? How do we formulate actions? And then what kind of sequence? And then finally, how do we measure this? How do we know how we're doing progress? I'll talk to a student who's working on a PhD. First thing I'm going to ask, what stage are you in? They say, I'm completing coursework. When are you going to complete? Guess what comes out their mouth? I hope I'm going to finish by August. I nailed that right on the spot. Never use that word again, I hope. Tell me when you're going to finish. They go, oh my God. I said, let's practice it. When you getting out? They say, August. What date? I asked, what day? Let's measure it. Let's put a milestone out there so we can get there. And that's what we're talking about. And then finally, how am I doing? I told you I got a PhD in talking, I didn't talk too much. Mentors follow tried and proven practice and protocol. What went well for you? I don't mean you've been perfect. I don't mean you got it perfect. But you know those missteps along in your life that didn't come out right. And then we ought to help other folk not fall in that same hole. Let me shut up. I told you, I told them when they called me, I said, you all not going to give me enough time. I have no time left. Took up all my time. Thank you all so very much. Let me just ask all of you to get in somebody else's life where you can use your experience, whatever level you are, and enable somebody else to be better than they are the day you met them. That's what if all of us were doing this, we could multiply this a lot. Thank you all so very much for letting me, and I wasn't nasty to you. I was vocal.